Hello, I'm Richard Burton from the Richard Burton Watercolour channel here at Bempton on the Yorkshire coast. And today I'm going to ask you a question. Do you struggle with your seascapes? Do you struggle to get that mood and atmosphere? Well, today we're going to do something really quite different. We're going to show you a complete picture, no time lapsing. So you're going to see every brush stroke. It's going to take about 30 minutes, but we're going to capture a mood and atmospheric seascape that really shows you the different steps, the stages to really capture the light, the reflection, all on a moist and damp surface by applying the colour in a certain way. You're going to enjoy this. It's going to be really quite different. Let's get down to it. Also, if you like this approach that shows you every brush stroke, well, we've got a whole online course that takes you through the techniques, takes you through the approach, and it shows you, as I said, every brush stroke, all the techniques, and it goes into much more detail, and it's in the link below. Okay, so this is the scene. It's early morning sunrise at Hunmanby Gap with the wonderful glass-like reflections coming in from the sun on the water. I'm stood actually in the water, and as you can see, the waves are coming. It's a calm day with lovely light, but I really want to focus on the wonderful reflections, the light, the glisten, and try and capture that mood and atmosphere. Okay, so here we have it, our 300 gram paper, not surfaced, and I've drawn in the picture, kept the lines very simple. I've got the horizon line above centre, and then I've got the cliffs. I'll put the silhouette of the cliffs in. I'll put a little bit of the suggestion of where these waves are and this shallow wave that's just coming ashore. And then with my masking brush and a bottle of masking liquid, I'll put some highlights for the really strong sun and its respective sun in the reflection. And then I put some suggestions of lines on the water just to capture that really strong reflection from the sun and the clouds that are just glistening on the water surface. And that now is us ready to do the painting. Also, we've got our free watercolour starter guide, which if you're new to watercolour or you're coming back to watercolour, it's giving you 5 steps of the basics of watercolour, and it will really help you guide you through that sort of initial steps into a more structured approach. We've got over 4,000 people on this guide. We're getting a lot of good feedback from it, and it's totally free. So it's just in the link below. Grab yourself a copy. As regards brushes, I've got 4 brushes. I'm going to use 2 wash brushes. So I've got a number 16 and I've got a number 12, and then I've got 2 smaller brushes for sort of suggestions of detail. Well, not really much detail, but just suggestions of interest, and that's an 8 and a 6 and a long 6, as you can see there. Then we've got our colour story. I've sort of set this out really now already, and what I've got is I've got a cold side and a warm side, and this is for the warm side starting on. That's going to be the sky and the warmth on the horizon and the sort of reflective in the water. That's going to be cadmium yellow with yellow ochre, and then I've brought in a little bit of burnt umber in the mix just to create that little bit of shadow. And then I've got cobalt blue and light red for, well, cobalt blue, light red, a bit of crimson as well, just for some of the shadow clouds. So that sets the clouds. And then I've got the sky blue, which is cobalt blue and cerulean blue. And then I've used some alizarin crimson in there just to create a bit of a cooler crimson look. And then I've added some suggestion of a little bit more light red and cobalt blue. That changes the colour tone. And then I'll come down here, I've got a little bit more cobalt blue and light red. This is more for the beach, where I've got ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to use light red, cobalt blue, and a little bit of cadmium red as well, just so I've got that range. And that sort of sets up the story. We're obviously going to add to that as we go. Not a lot, but more about getting the colour values. But the key for this painting is we're going to do it really quickly, capture the moisture, hold the moisture at the right moisture level. So after that damp and sort of moist surface rather than really wet. So that's going to be crucial. And then I can show you how we can capture that moisture, hold the colours in place, and it'll just hold it together. So let's get down to it. Also, alongside this, I've got some really dark watercolour here, which are a sense of neutral tints, but with a varied type. Now, I'm going to use purple black, and I'm going to use a bluish black. They're the ones that I'm going to use. They're a really intense watercolour, and they're going to be useful just to give that extra punch to the darks, just to be able to create that sense of depth. And we'll see how they're going. I've only used these a couple of times. I'm experimenting with them, and we'll see how they go. Okay, so let's start. We'll get on with the sky. What I'm going to do now is just get my cadmium yellow that I've already prepared. Actually, just need a little bit more strength to it. And put that suggestion around the really bright highlight of the sun. And then I'm going to move down to this yellow ochre and drop that in. Add a bit of water to it. Just dance the brush. I want to capture the light and the cloud coming through. I don't want to lose any of that. Bring that down. I'm painting onto dry, as you can see, onto a dry surface, but I'm putting it so I'm leaving lots of white to show through. That's my first aim. I want to capture that light coming through. As I come down, I'm going to add a little bit of crimson to this, just to give me a little bit more warmth towards the horizon. Bit of a colour range. Let's just chuck a bit in. So, oh, that's better. Just chuck a little bit of that in. Diffuse it in parts, just bring that up, some of these clouds, and then what I'm doing, I'm just going to soften some of the edges. So I've got much more of a soft edged feel with lost and found edges. Now I'm going to move to the bigger brush and I'm going to go into the blue, which is this cobalt blue and cerulean blue, much stronger on the left hand side, and then we'll bring it across. So let's get that in first quickly, really quick, bring that down. Scoop that in. I'm going to just capture some of those clouds. I just want to watch out I don't lose the crisp edges in parts. Bring it down. So come down into here. That's lovely. Add a little bit of the crimson element that I wanted. We'll come down here. Diffuse that down. Crimson on the bottom. That diffuse. Want me to put the horizon? Just soften it up. That's great. So that's first in. Now I'm going to take off some of these little bits of swimming pools that I've got. Just excess water so that we get a little bit of control. Got a little bit of colour there. Now I'm going to soften this. Now I'm going to put in some of my shadows on the clouds. They're a little bit purple onto the right side, but as I come down to, or on the left side rather, as I come down to the right, I'm going to use some of this earlier warmer colour. I'm just going to drop that in, capture this feeling of shadow in the cloud. A bit of grey up here. All onto a, well, it's a mix of dry and moist. So where I'm adding colour, it's going to onto a moist, and I'm just watching for the edges. So I'm now just softening some of these edges. I want the light to come through. I want the light to really sort of push through. And this now is the cobalt blue with a little bit of the crimson and a little bit of the burnt umber that I had earlier. So I can just capture a little bit of this grey. This is the sort of shadow in the cloud that's just punching its way through. And it'll complement the little bits of white that I'm leaving and hopefully give me a real sense of light coming through the clouds. That's in. And then we'll soften it up and we'll leave that sky to blend and do its stuff. I'll just get a smaller brush just to soften the edges with. And that will just about do for what I need at this stage. That's fine. So now we'll come straight down into, oh, I just got a little bit of excess water here. I'll just lift that off. The only thing is I just want to make sure I get these swimming pools out of the way, otherwise it's going to dry and just give me a little bit of a headache when it creates cauliflowers and such like. The key is to make sure you've got an even surface of water so it will diffuse and soften on its own quite nicely. I'm just watching just in case there's any excess. I think that's about it. Just soften an edge here and there still, and that'll do. So now we're going to come into the water. I'm going to replicate the sky in the water, and then we're going to get this really strong beach which has got some punch in it, and I want to catch that water that's just flowing over the surface, but you've got sand coming through, so we're trying to capture that. Now this is going to be this side of the palette, mainly with the blues, and obviously I'm going to put some of this warmer for the horizon area. So wash our brushes quickly. I'll put some of this yellow around the sun so I can capture that extra bit of light, and then we'll go back up to the top here with this yellow ochre. I'm going to drop this in, let it flow. There's going to be a lot of diffusion on here, not so much hard edges at all. I'm just going to let these colours diffuse, but what I'm wanting to do, I want to capture a moist surface that's got a little bit of damp, but it's not totally wet. So I'm putting these onto a, that's why I'm doing it on a dry. I'm not pre-wetting the surface first. I'm just allowing these colours to settle into the paper, soaking in with a bit of colour. So I've got some control. Bring this down. This is the highlight warm area. I'm going to add some water just to make sure, just clear water here and there, so I can ensure that I capture in a smooth surface. But as you can see, there's some colour just starting to come in. Now I'm going to get some of this darker, and I'm going to put this onto this side on the right here, which I put the masking fluid in earlier. And the aim here is this will be that little bit, it will provide a platform for those sparkling masking elements to really come through. Drop that in, let it diffuse. Comes down, add a bit of pink into that, just a bit of crimson into there. And just give that a little bit more of a feel. That's coming on. It's all diffusing nicely. Now we're going to really start with the blue, and we're going to come down the other side. Go back to my bigger brush. And this is where I'm going to start putting the blue in. This is the, if you remember, was the cobalt blue and the cerulean blue. I'm going to put some brush strokes here into here. Just come as far as I need, but just drop that in. I want to get this nice and diffused, but just so it holds its shape. So you can see the colours are going in, they're holding the value, but nonetheless just diffusing through. Bring this down. Now I'm coming to the shallow area where I'm looking into the water. So first of all, that's all reflecting the sky. As I come down, I'm looking into the water where you're really going to get that punchy feel. I say punchy, I'm saying that a lot really, but what I'm after is trying to capture that differential. I'm looking into the water and you can see the sand underneath. So that's the key. Now this is where I've got here, which is the cobalt blue, the light red and the cadmium yellow. So we're going to get into that now. I'm going to start dropping some of this in. In place, let that flow. I want to get it quite punchy, so I really want to get some value into it. I want to get some strength into it, so I can drop this in, bring it along, push it back up into the higher area, because I'm still just catching a little bit of both the sand and the reflection. So you're going to get a bit of a transition part there. I'm going to get a little different brush because I've just lost a bit of control there. So I've just got a brush here which is separate, washing that through, squeezing that off, and just bring that down. Now back to my big brush again, where I'm going to come down here with my cobalt blue, light red and cadmium red. Drop this in, bring this down. This is going to be, and what I'm wanting to make sure here is I'm putting it on quite strong. It's going to dry lighter, and I'm conscious of that, but I want to make sure that I get it in, float the colour, just float the colour in. It's quite the red at the moment. As I come over, I'm going to add some more blue. And then I'm going to just drop that in amongst it and let it float. Just let it diffuse and float. And this is going to hopefully now granulate together. They're going to blend together. I want to get some strength in here, but just let these colours just float through. As I come over here, I'm going to add a little bit of crimson to it, just because I just want a colour change, because I'm looking into the light a bit, and I've had a bit of water, so I'm going to weaken it here, but it's still moist and onto the dry surface, which just a bit more moisture here. Bring this up this side, join it up with that little bit of colour there, and we are quite close to being in a position of being happy with this underwash. And I want to just let these colours blend in together. I'm going to make a little bit stronger with this blue. Drop this in. I'm just letting it soak in, and I'm wanting to just watch this now as it comes in. Just probably drop down a brush size, so I've got a little bit more control. Make sure I've got quite a bit of this on my brush, and then put some brush marks that will just hopefully give me a little bit more transition. There's a little bit more movement of this water on this side that I'm just going to put in by some horizontal lines coming in from the left. This is granulating, separating a little bit. I'm just going to let that soak in, and then I'm going to add in some final strength to it. And once we've got that, we'll call it a day. And this is just a blue, cobalt blue, and cerulean blue. Drop these in. And then we'll have a coffee after this, and then we'll come back and do the next step. Okay, so that's the stage where we let it dry. Come back to it now. The colours have settled. That's lovely. So what we'll do now is we'll put the cliffs in, and then we'll put the water, the sea, and the breakers, the waves coming ashore. Okay. What we'll start with is the background, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a yellow ochre wash onto the cliffs here. In fact, I use my bigger brush. This will just set the scene. This will be an undercolour that will then add darks to, and it will just provide that platform to allow us that little bit of diffusion to come through. This is mostly yellow ochre. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber as I come down. And then as I come further down, I'm going to add the cobalt blue and the crimson. A little bit of light red actually as well. And then wants to transition to a blue, grey, as we move into the distance. Catches that. I'm going to bring that brush a few brush strokes further up. Now what I want to do, I'm going to mix some stronger dark, which is going to be ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Drop this in, pick up a feel of the shadows, undulations. Drop this in, have a few choice brush, just a few subtle brush marks to pick up a few silhouettes on the horizon, on the top of the cliff. Drop that down really quick. Bring that down. Add a little bit of crimson because it's just moving a bit further away. That colour change will just help us lead the eye into the picture. Then we're going to utilise these darks. I'm going to get this dark now. I'm going to use a purple black, and I'm going to put some really strong punchy darks into this, particularly down the bottom of the cliffs that just catches the light, and bring that, just drag it down onto the beach just to capture a few lost and found edges. Mix it with a bit of that earlier dark. We'll just let those diffuse. Try to pick up some of the suggestions of shadow. But it wants to be nice and punchy as I come down. Going into the diffuse distance. Bring it down onto the edge, and with a small drop to my other small brush now, which is a bit more of a point on it, I'm going to put some suggestions, a little bits on the beach in the distance. And that will hopefully suffice for the cliffs. I'm going to put an extra bit of dark here and there, just to, particularly at this right hand side, which is closer to us. Drop that in. And that'll complete that little section. Now, what I'm going to do now, I want to come down into this area here and try and capture the reflections of the cliffs. Now, what we've got here, I've got some clear reflection, and then I've got some sparkling reflection where I need to use a dry brush effect. And that is basically using my brush, the side of the brush, just to sort of capture a feeling where you just capture, you're touching the surface and you get that broken effect. And here we go, we're going to put this in here. Drop that in. Stronger, a little bit more dense in parts, and then in other parts I'm going to have it very much broken edged with a deliberate intention to give the impression of some of the reflection. I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm going to just drop now, using this dark, I'm going to just add a little bit of the cobalt blue to it, just because what I wanted to do, there's a sense of reflection of the cliffs in the distance, but it has a little bit more blue to it. So I'm going to just drop that in like so. Just across the piece like this, just some lines. And that'll pick up that. I'm also going to use this lighter blue just on the other side of the beach. Just to pick up a little bit of shade. Not much shade, but just a hint of shade. Drop that in. Again, going into the distance. And that completes that area. Now, let that settle in, and then what we'll do now, I'm going to just come back over here. I'm going to get the sea. The sea is going to be Prussian blue into this cobalt blue. So I'm going to mix a bit of Prussian blue and cobalt blue with a little bit of crimson. Put the sea in. It's darker on the horizon, and then as it comes closer, the colour changes. It has a little bit more water to it, so I'm going to weaken it as it comes towards the horizon, and also into the middle because it's catching the sun a bit more in the middle. Bring that along. See that slight colour change, and then I'm going to have a stagger the brush just to pick up the tops of the waves, like so. I'll do fine, and then I want a bit more cobalt blue, and I want to capture this very shallow wave that's just coming ashore. So you've got that different layers of colour. Just drop that in. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to utilise a pooling of the water just as it comes to the edge of the wave to literally create a tide mark, because I want to create a feeling of shadow just at the point of where the wave actually touches comes onto the beach. And now what I'm doing here now is getting some of that stronger colour and just pulling it and just dropping it in and letting that pull. Can you see how that is just holding its shape? Now normally I always say let's do a bit of housekeeping and take that up and remove that, but in this case I'm deliberately leaving it there so that it just picks up a little bit of structure and a little bit of shape. And what it gives it a slight feeling of a three-dimensional feel to that wave that's just running ashore. And while that's in, I might just put a few brush marks onto the water here just to cascade a little bit of water that's coming ashore from the waves. This is again is cobalt blue, a little bit of crimson colour in there. Just drop those in, and that is pretty much where I want that to be. I'm going to get a little bit of this dark here now with a little bit of the warmer colour in it, just a hint of the warmer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little bit of the underside of these waves, just drop it in delicately, drop it in like so, wash my brush and then soften these edges. This is just a suggestion of the waves breaking. I want a little bit of darkness underneath there, just a hint of it, just as though they're coming ashore, and then that will just help to give a little bit of an impression. And then what we're left with now is really to give a little bit more look at it, and I'm looking at a little bit more shading in here in this middle area. Now this is going to be back to my medium brush, and I want to just give a little bit more shading. So what I'm going to go, I'm getting a warmer shadow, so it's more the sky that I'm reflecting, so I'm getting back to this shadow colour here, and I'm going to drop this in, and I'm going to drop in some dark in there. It's basically yellow ochre with a little bit of burnt umber in it, but I'm also going to add a little bit of crimson just to capture that feeling of shadow from the sky. So I'm going to drop this in, diffuse it, make it a little bit stronger in parts, just let that flow in. It's going onto a dry surface, as you can see, so I'm putting areas of colour, and then I'm going to get some water and just diffuse it. Lift it up a bit in parts so I've got that little bit of variation. But what it's doing is just giving me a platform a little bit darker, so that I can hopefully, when we take these masking areas off, we'll be able to see it will make those stand out, and we'll get that extra bit of sparkle in the water. Just let those a bit darker, add a bit of later crimson in just to drop a little bit of hints of it, picking up from the sun. That's fine. Keep it quite diffused. Watch the edges, just letting those diffuse. And then down here, I'm going to add a little bit of shadow. I've got some water here just coming ashore, so I'm just another pool of water. So I'm just putting some shadow in here, which when we take it off, hopefully will give a feeling of a little bit of a pool of water coming across. And then we're getting quite close to being put in the china. I'm going to make these a little bit darker just on the edge here, because I just want this to capture a bit of shadow from this water. Like so, that's fine. And now I'm going to get some water, shadow again for the underside of the waves. This wants to be a bit bluer though. It's just that hint of on the waves, just a little bit of shadow inside the waves and on the top. Little bit in the distance, which is a bit of blue. A bit more here, a bit more under there, a line or two. And then I'm just looking at it again. I just think I want to get a little bit more dark with this reflection. And a bit more in here just to capture a little bit more out of the cliff edge. and then we'll take a little look at it. I'm now just looking at it again, and I just feel as though I want a little bit more blue in the distance, so I'm going to make a little bit more of the cobalt blue and the light red, just to capture that little bit of feeling of distance to the cliffs, make them stand out a little bit more. I'm going to put an edge on the top of them, and then just add some water underneath so it just diffuses down a little bit. A little bit lighter in the middle, just where the light is. The sun is hitting those, and then we're not far off. Ready to put some Chinese white on just to capture the surface water, this is purely about getting a feel for some of these surfing, little bits of surf that's just foam, I would say, from the waves. I should say foam from the waves. And we're going to put these on using some of this Chinese white, and we'll just put some little bits here and there. Drop it in here and there, like so. These are a little, there's some over here that have already masked out, and I'll be happy to leave those because they're a little bit lighter. I'll put some Chinese white here as well, just a little bit over on this side, just to try and capture that feeling of some of the marks in the water. And then we'll let this dry, and we'll then take the masking off. Okay, I'm just going to, before it dries thoroughly, I'm going to put a little bit more cloud affections around here, some of the highlight areas, just to give that secondary light. Just to dance it about. Add a bit of water to it to soften it. These will dry a lot lighter, and that will hopefully do the trick. Okay, so now dry again. What we're going to do is now lift off the masking fluid. And that, well, lift it off, I'm just rub it off. Just by gently rubbing the fingers side to side, I'm going to pick up that masking fluid. And this will now pick out those highlights from the sun. And once I've done that, I'll just look at one or two, and I'm just going to cool them down a little bit in parts are just a bit stark. Just soften them down. And I think that's about it. Okay, so there we have it, the finished painting. I put a mount around it, put a frame around it, and you can see the final colours now that they've dried and settled. And I think we've caught it. What we're after was that early morning sunrise that sort of with the beach, with the shimmering surf, the waves coming ashore, catching the light, catching the mood, catching the atmosphere. And I think we've done that. Now, the key for me was the steps that we took. We dealt with the sky, we dealt with the water and the reflections, and it was those steps, but also having that drying time between so that we have a distinct separate steps and then that spaces in between, and then putting them together you get quite an effective result. Now, of course, what we could have done, we could have added some figures. I didn't on this one, but I've got another one here that I did in class that you can see there, and now I've just added a little bit of interest with the dog and the figure, and you can see that just gives that extra little bit of interest, a little bit. Now we can do that later. You can do that to add on to this picture, and it just gives that a further little bit of interest. So I really hope you've enjoyed that, and you've enjoyed the process and the technique that goes with it. And if you have done that and you've really found it useful, I've got to mention that we've got our whole online course which covers this approach, this complete painting approach with no time lapse at all, but just takes you through the steps, through the techniques, through the approaches, through the colours, understanding the water and the moisture to get that effective watercolour, to unlock the magic, as I say, to be able to create an effective approach to watercolour. Now, it's in the link below, so have a look and see what you think. And now I want to say a big thank you to all those that you subscribed. We've got nearly 12,000 subscribers, which is massive considering we're only 13 months old as a channel. And of course, if you're new to this and you've just come across it, please do like and subscribe because it helps us get picked up by a wider audience and celebrate the joys of watercolour. In the meantime, enjoy and keep painting.